Hey everyone, welcome. Today, in this explainer, we're going to look at the world a little bit differently. We are talking about Edward Said. You see, he wasn't just a literary critic or some professor tucked away in a classroom. He was more like a master lens maker. He gave us the exact tools we need to truly see how power, history, and culture shape our everyday reality. So let's dive right into this.
Now, think about this for a second. How did roughly 100,000 British officials manage to rule over hundreds of millions of Indians for so incredibly long? It's a mind-boggling question when you really look at the numbers, right? As university students right here in India, you already know the heavy, complex history of the Raj. But Edward Said asks us to look past just the military force and the sheer economic control.
Well, the answer, at least according to Said's framework, is simply culture. He called this ideological pacification. Basically, it means that empires don't just survive by pointing weapons at people. No, they survive by using cultural power to make people accept, cooperate with, and sometimes even admire the very people ruling them. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that culture is just as powerful as an army.
Section 1. Who is Edward Said?
So, who was he? Well, Edward Said was born Palestinian, but he felt displaced pretty much his entire life. He was educated in Western schools and eventually became a prominent literature professor at Columbia University in New York. He actually described himself as an exile who always felt out of place. But, this exact feeling of living somewhere between the East and the West gave him the absolute perfect vantage point. He could step back and critique both sides with incredible clarity.
Section 2. The power of Orientalism.
To really grasp Orientalism, we first got to unpack a big concept called epistemology. Now, don't let the academic term freak you out. It literally just means the study of knowledge. In Said's framework, knowing about a region or its people literally gives you the power to dominate them. Knowledge really is power here. He showed this using the words of Arthur Balfour, a British politician who justified occupying Egypt simply by saying that the West knew Egypt better than anyone else. Because they claimed to possess the knowledge, they claimed the right to rule. And this exact idea forms the core of his groundbreaking 1978 book, Orientalism. Said argued that Orientalism wasn't just some innocent academic study happening in a library. It was actually a massive cultural machine that Europe used to construct, manage, and completely dominate the East, which they called the Orient. This framework built an entirely artificial, rigid divide, the Occident, meaning the West, versus the Orient, meaning the East. Said showed how imperial powers basically invented this us versus them binary. They defined the West as superior, rational, and strong simply by painting the East as inferior, irrational, and alien. It was a totally created story, sure, but it was used to justify very real empires.
Section 3. Culture as Imperialism.
As the English poet William Blake once noted, the very foundation of empire is art and science. Said took this exact thought to show that things like novels, poetry, and even standard geography books were secretly doing the heavy lifting of imperial subjugation. They were quietly convincing everyone reading them that Western rule was just completely natural and right.
Said basically breaks down the imperial playbook into 3 exact steps. First, you divide the world geographically. Second, you consolidate ideas about race, making some groups seem naturally fit to rule over others. And third, you weave this Western domination right into high culture. You bake it into the everyday art and education that regular people consume until imperial superiority is taken completely for granted.
Section 4. Reading texts contrapuntally.
Said was actually a huge fan of classical music, and he used this beautiful musical metaphor to explain his method. In Western classical music, counterpoint is when different melodies play at the exact same time, creating one complex, richer piece. Said says we need to read books the exact same way. We must listen to the multiple, simultaneous melodies of history, all at the exact same time.
So how do you apply this to your own literature studies as undergrads? Well, when you read a classic English novel, you shouldn't just see the dominant history, like, the wealthy British family living in a fancy estate. You must simultaneously read the suppressed, colonized history. You have to look for the colonial sugar plantation or the overseas wealth that is secretly funding that lavish lifestyle. You read the 2 histories together, playing off each other.
Section 5. The worldly critic.
This starts with a concept Said called worldliness. The absolutely crucial point here is that books do not exist in a vacuum. A novel is never just innocent art. It is deeply, fundamentally tied to the real world of power, politics, and history. When we read, Said tells us, we must always ask, who is speaking, and what material realities actually shaped their words?
To do this properly, Said says you've got to become a secular critic. Now, don't let the word secular confuse you here. He just means staying active and engaged in the real world. A secular critic completely rejects hiding away in an academic ivory tower. They avoid blind loyalty to any dogmatic isms or factions. They stay connected to actual political realities. And most importantly, they view the whole world as a foreign land, keeping a totally open, questioning mind.
Section 6. Speaking Truth to Power.
Said firmly believed that intellectuals have to use their worldly knowledge to fight for emancipation and justice. But, and this is a really big but, he warned against getting stuck in a politics of blame. Just blaming imperialism forever doesn't magically change the future. You have to use your critical voice to actively build a better world. And you know, Said practiced exactly what he preached. He maintained his independent, exiled distance so he could impartially criticize all sides of highly charged political events. He openly criticized his own U.S. government during the Gulf War. But he also criticized his own Palestinian leadership regarding the Oslo Accords when he felt it was necessary. He didn't just take comfortable sides. He spoke his truth to power, whoever happened to be holding it. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. I want to leave you guys with this provocative challenge. With these lenses now in your hands, how will you read the world around you? Next time you pick up a novel, watch a film, or read the daily news, try doing a contrapunctual reading. Ask yourself who holds the power, and what hidden histories are just waiting to be heard. Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the world.